Hey guys, Mrs. Karaz here. Today we're starting Chapter 6, finally, the American Revolution. This is Section 1, A Nation Declares Independence. Alright, so in early 1776, we have to remember, many colonists were still undecided about what their relationship should be with Britain, right? Patriots and Loyalists were both really vocal about their own opinions. Patriots thought we should be independent, Loyalists thought we should stick with Britain, but most people at this time were still neutralists, right? They stayed in the middle, they didn't want to see a fight in either direction. Let's just find a peaceful solution that makes everyone happy. That's the dream. Is it going to be the reality? No. Alright, so at this time, when people are so undecided, we have a guy named Thomas Paine, and he writes a pamphlet called Common Sense. And it was called Common Sense because it explained why colonial independence just made common sense, right? It's that straightforward. When Paine published it, he didn't use his name. The author was just listed as an Englishman, which is a little ironic to me if you're claiming you want independence from England. So this pamphlet was published in January in 1776 in Philadelphia. And when he wrote it, Paine was very careful to write it in a way that commoners could understand, right? He wasn't using this fancy, legal language. He used logic, he used powerful words, and he knew that religion was important to people, so he used frequent biblical references to really drive his point home and get people on his side. He wanted to convince people that this made common sense. We should just be independent. So here's some of the things that Paine did in Common Sense. So he called King George III a royal brute. A little wordplay there. I think that's funny. He ridiculed the idea of a monarchy. He said it's just ridiculous to think that one person should be in charge of many, many people. He brought up the fact that the colonies were populated by people from many different nations. It wasn't just British citizens here, so you can't really call us British if there are all people from all different countries now living here. And he also came to that issue of mercantilism. He discussed all the benefits that Britain received by having a relationship with the colonies, when the colonies weren't benefiting for the most part. They were being hurt more by their relationship with Britain. So, between January of 1776 and July of 1776, 500,000 copies of this pamphlet were sold. And keep in mind that there were only 2 million people in the colonies at that time. So, if there are 4 people in a household, every person has one. Or every household has one, excuse me. And this argument was really effective, right? What Paine said, a lot of people agreed. Yeah, it does make sense, and a lot of people decided to become patriots after reading Common Sense because this just really appealed to their logic. So now we have more support of colonial independence, so things are going to start happening pretty quickly. In May of 1776, Virginia as a colony decides that they are in favor of independence, okay? Richard Henry Lee, who was a Virginia delegate, introduced a resolution, stating that the United Colonies should be free, independent states. And this becomes known as Virginia's Resolution. A resolution, by the way, is a formal statement of opinion. So the colony of Virginia formally stated their belief that all colonies should be free from British rule. So now, before the delegates from all the colonies voted on this resolution to say whether or not they agreed with what Virginia as a colony was saying, they wanted to make sure their actions were justified. They wanted to have everything spelled out in black and white so that no one could say, oh, you're just being hasty, oh, you're just rushing into things, right? They wanted to say, no, here's why we're choosing what we're choosing. Let's really think this through. So they decided that a committee should be formed, and that committee would work together to write out the reasons why the colonies should be free. And Thomas Jefferson, who at this time was a delegate from Virginia, was given the job of writing about the fact that we have a right to be independent. The document he wrote became the Declaration of Independence. What do you know? So the Declaration of Independence we're going to look at super in-depth in class, and I'm really excited about it. It uses logic and step-by-step thinking to prove why the colonies deserve freedom, right? It's not just saying, hey, we're doing this. It's saying we have a right to do this, and we're going to explain it to you. The Declaration of Independence was built on ideas from the Enlightenment, right, which we thought about logic and human reasoning. We've talked about that before. It was approved by Congress on July 4th, 1776, which is why July 4th is now officially Independence Day. But it was actually signed on August 2nd, 1776, for whatever that is worth. So just some flashbacks, and like I said, we're going to go through this a lot in class. This is just the flash review. Thinking about the Enlightenment, so we had a gentleman named John Locke who was very influential. He argued that certain natural rights belong to every human being beginning the moment that they are born. These include life, liberty, and property, and these rights can't be taken away. Locke challenged the idea of divine right, or the idea that rulers get their authority directly from God. He thought that was ridiculous. And he said that people should form government to protect their natural rights. If I'm moving quickly, it's on purpose, because we've seen all this before. Montesquieu was another Enlightenment thinker. He argued that powers of government should be clearly defined and limited. He favored separation of powers, or the division of the power of the government into separate branches. And he said if we separate the different powers, this keeps one person from having too much power over anyone else. So Montesquieu thought there should be a legislative branch that makes laws, an executive branch that enforces laws, and a judicial branch that makes judgments based on the law. So let's take a look at our own declaration and see how those ideas influence us. So the Declaration of Independence, which I will be abbreviating as DOI on everything, begins with a preamble, and a preamble is an introduction. The Declaration's preamble states that in the rest of the document, the colonists will prove why they're choosing to separate from Great Britain. It's basically the, introductory paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. The next section focuses on natural rights, and this is really a place where we see that connection to the Enlightenment thinkers, right? In this section, the Declaration lists certain rights that all people have, including life, liberty, those sound familiar, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration further states that governments should form to protect those rights, and we know that was Locke's idea, right? We just saw it. But the British have not protected the rights of the colonists. That's where we come to at the end of this natural rights section. It's a government's responsibility to protect these rights. The British have not done that for us. And here we move into a list of grievances, right? A grievance is a formal complaint, like a specific problem that you have. So in this section, the Declaration lists the ways that Britain has violated our rights, right? We just said previously that Britain hasn't protected our rights. Don't believe us? Here is a bullet-pointed list of every single way Britain has violated our rights. It goes further to say that Britain denied even the rights that were guaranteed in its own Magna Carta, right? I wrote Magna Carta, or like Jay-Z, I should say Magna Carta. Worst of all, the colonists said that they were ignored when they asked to have their rights honored, and this was like the biggest insult. So after presenting the rights that all people should have and discussing how Britain has violated the colonists' rights, the Declaration can only come to one logical conclusion, and that conclusion is that the colonists must declare independence from Great Britain in order to protect their natural rights. You're not taking care of us, we need to take care of us. And in this final section, they name that the colonies are free and independent states. So now thinking about the Declaration and its impact, right? It was a risk to actually sign on this declaration, which, obviously delegates from all the colonies had to do. So the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, they really believed what they were signing their name on, right? They really thought that they deserved and needed independence from Britain. But they knew it was risky. You're putting your name on something where you're publicly going against one of the most powerful governments in the world. You could be punished if you were captured by the British, and punishment might be like the nicest word for what could happen to you. So it was a risk. we also have this declaration really changing the face of the revolution as a whole. Because at first, people who were fighting this war wanted to be treated fairly by the British. Now we don't just want to be treated fairly, we want to be free from you. We want to be separate from you. And that's going to change for both parties involved, how the war is fought entirely. And if we're thinking about the impact of the Declaration, right, it didn't just stop in 1776. In the time since it was signed, the Declaration has inspired people from many other nations to also strive for independence. So, like I said, this was just scratching the surface of the Declaration, but we are going to discuss this a lot in class. It's one of my favorite things we focus on this year, so I look forward to starting it with you very, very soon. Have a great day, guys.